Welcome to another episode of the Next Chapter podcast. I'm very excited to be joined today with Nikki, a mother of three children. So, as you can imagine, I'm sure they keep her busy: a 9.5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Yes.
And so I'm excited for Nikki to be able to share her journey and how she balances motherhood alongside the things that she is very passionate about. So, welcome, Nikki.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited to share your story with our community because it's an inspirational one. I know we've spoken before. And so I thought it would be interesting to start at the very beginning of Nikki and what you were dreaming of becoming when you were a little girl.
Okay, so when I was a little girl, I was definitely a tomboy. I was not into the girly things I currently see my daughter into, but I really enjoyed the outdoors. So a lot of the time I'd be outside with insects and, I had pet dogs, and I always thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I really enjoyed science, and that interest only got stronger as I got older. But I also had other passions around like scrapbooking. And so it's really interesting because I kind of went in both directions as I got older. Those passions never went away.
Well, that's amazing. And I asked the question where someone wanted to, where they thought they would be when they were younger, because at times that's something, a path that people end up following. And at other times when people are struggling, that's a good place to go back to your childhood dreams, something that obviously lit you up back then and helps to propel people to move forward. So, can you share with us kind of some of the pivotal moments in your life that have led you to where you are today?
Pivotal moments. So should I go through the whole history? Right now I'm married and I'm running KidVids, but there was, some twists and turns to get there. And, I would say essentially, my undergrad and graduate work ended up being in science education. I taught high school for many years before I had my first kid. And then, because I was worried about childcare, I'm trying to get through it all very quickly here. We could delve more deeply if you want to. But once I had my child, I thought that the work-life balance was going to be really tough. My students
Sure.
were my first kids, and I put 110% into my job, and I really loved it, and I would love to go back to it someday. But with three kids now, I just don't see that, happening. And I want to stay busy, and I can talk more about how KidVid started, but I am here today because I'm able to kind of do both, be the mom, but also, I enjoy doing what I do now too. So it's the balance of the two. I don't know if there's pivotal moments, but my mom always said to me, "Look, you want to have a family, that's a priority to you. You may want to go into education." So
Mhm.
that was kind of a pivotal thing away from the veterinary track, where I still was pursuing science, but wasn't going to go with the sort of route that I thought I originally was going to follow.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I wanted to highlight a couple of things. The first is I appreciate you sharing the twists and turns
Yeah.
of your journey. And before I, highlight anything else, can you kind of explain what you mean by the twists and turns? Why that
Just
came
twists and
up?
turns. Like I said, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I remember just every year in like elementary school, middle school, they always say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I even remember in Spanish class, like, what is it, soy de veterinaria? Like, I just always that was my response. It was the go-to response. Like I said, I always was really inquisitive. But I did meet my husband in my undergrad, so you know, thinking along the lines of that relationship, and again, started wanting to start a family. I always wanted to have a backup plan that if I ever
Mhm.
decided to go back to veterinary school, I'd still have all the science courses under my belt. So I took everything that was going to be required of veterinary school, so I'd never have to go back and do it.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
yeah, but I also was able to I graduated from NYU, and in my undergrad I was certified to teach. So right out of college, I was able to pursue education, and so I think that was one of the biggest twists is like my husband's,
Yeah.
and then just not pursuing a veterinary degree, which I always thought would be the case. And I don't know. I definitely give working moms a lot of credit who have to wake up every day and pack the lunches and still get out the door for themselves. But I was very fortunate I didn't have to do that. And so, when we were discussing childcare, being able to stay home with my kid, that was a big pivotal thing, dropping my career, so to speak, which I had been teaching for maybe 8 or 9 years at that time when I stopped, maybe 8 years when I
Mm-hmm.
stopped teaching, and thinking, oh, I'll just go back after the second kid, first kid. That never happened. So, and then again, this was just kind of taking off my KidVids piece. So I guess, like I said, the relationship changing, what I thought I'd be doing, and having kids, all those pivot. But it's nothing dramatic. I feel like some people go through really, traumatic experiences that are pivot,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't say that I had any of that. I was very fortunate. They were all by choice.
Yeah, which is nice. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, some are by choice, some are by life events,
right.
whether it's in the world or whether it's health related or whatever. But it is important to point out that while some people may start in one place and continue to move forward in that same kind of path, that we are always changing, we are always evolving. And when you lean into that, you can really carve a path that you feel comfortable with and that you're fulfilled with. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. The other thing that I wanted to highlight that you just mentioned is that you kind of like that you were dropping kind of your career and moving forward. What did that kind of feel like for you when you were making that important decision to leave something that you were so passionate about? You said that those were your first children. I also know just from speaking to you in previous conversations that you even wrote, I believe, a book to help kind of propel your educational experience with your students. So, can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you put a lot of work. Like I said, I would stay at school as late as I needed to. I didn't have kids of my own. My weekends were curriculum development and grading stuff. So, leaving all that to have my own child and thinking I was going to return to it and realize, like I said, I give so much credit to people who do it, who have to raise their kids and, go to a job, 9 to 5. At that point, it was, I want to say 2013, which is when I had my first kid, but I also got my book published. It was an anatomy and physiology book. It was a textbook, which basically, it was about using relevance and narratives to try to teach the curriculum. And I was doing a lot of public speaking at the time, and I was going to a couple local conferences about it. And, you basically explaining to other science teachers how to incorporate these pieces into whatever subject area they want to teach in,
Mm-hmm.
and like cultural relevancy. And yeah, so things were kind of taking off, but at the same time, like family, your career you could always go back to a career. So I always had that mentality. You could always go back. It was the same with veterinary school. If I really want to do it in 10 years, I could go and do, like, I could always go back. School will always
Mm-hmm.
be there. And they always say your kids, the days are slow, right? But they
Right.
go fast. My parents remind me that all the time. And it's true. And so I'm really fortunate I was able to be with my children along every milestone. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
get to really miss anything. And it was me raising my kids. We never really hired outside help, much help. So I really was able to be there for everything. So I don't really have any regrets. But like I said, if I ever really want to go back to teaching, I can. It just won't be as easy this time around. I'm well aware
Right.
of that. Maybe when they're grown, you can always go
Yeah,
back.
no, but I appreciate that too, that recognizing that at that very moment, this was what you needed to do for yourself, for your family,
Mhm.
and knowing that you can go back, that a decision that you make that makes sense at one point in your life doesn't have to be a forever decision. And
Right.
so I think that that's a really important piece to highlight for others, that if you are considering a career change, a twist in your path,
Mhm.
that it is scary, but that you can always go back.
You
You
can.
can always take that road back, and maybe it looks a little different, but it is so important to continue to think about that. And then you mentioned that you are at home and working with your children. I'm curious. You said you haven't missed any of their milestones.
That's
I'd be
good.
curious. I'd be curious though, because I know as a working mother and being at home with kids, it's while it's beautiful, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard work. It's hard to balance time for yourself. It's hard to balance the different activities and having 3 kids. So I'm curious to find out what kind of struggle might look like for you at any given moment, because I think honestly that's things that people don't necessarily talk about, but I think we all at different times struggle. Maybe it's to get dinner on the table, maybe it's to put the shoes on your 3-year-old, whatever it is, but kind of what struggle looks like for you and then how you kind of handle that.
Okay, so I'm going to use the word like struggle because, it's
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
yeah, it's not, it's not the end of the world.
Right, and I appreciate you making that
Yeah, like,
that connection.
when I have chaos in my house, sometimes I truly have to laugh at it because I'll go crazy, as I think most parents will. I mean, my biggest struggle, we've had help here or there, and my parents are fortunately very local. My husband's are not. So it does fall on the burden falls on my parents to help a lot of the time, if I really need somebody. And I'm fortunate now to have some sitters on hand, to pop in and out. But for a while, I did not have that. So I would say very early on, when I had my first kid, I had started KidVids when he was kind of napping, and it was really for myself. It wasn't even a company yet. It was really just me. We haven't really talked about KidVids yet, but it was just me doing stuff for myself, really, videos and photos for myself. And I was doing that around the clock when he was napping. So, I'd try to get my son down and be like, everybody be quiet. He's sleeping. I need those 2 hours. Like, that's my alone time. Otherwise, I'm with him literally the rest of the day.
Right.
There's nobody to pass him off to. I was living in the city at the time. And so, I totally get it when a first-time parent is like schedule-oriented and they need those hours because I was that parent. And then once I had 2 kids, I just really had no time for myself. I was really excited to get my first off to school, but then I had the second one and it was the same thing. I was working during those nap hours. And I was really fortunate. We had already moved out to Long Island at the time. And my neighbor across the street would once in a while, I think it was like every Wednesday for 2 hours, she'd come over. And that was when I was not doing work. That was like me going to play tennis or like me going, going to work out. And it was once a week, I think. I wasn't getting that much time in to do that. And then finally I got my life together again because both my kids were in school. You always look forward to those hours that they're going to be out for a little bit. And I was able to start working out really and like have that time again to myself. But of course, then the pandemic hit, and my kids were, I want to say 5 and 3. So we thought we were getting, I had just conceived my daughter. So we won't go into all the details of that, but I was found that I was pregnant, like 13 weeks in the pandemic hits. And
wow.
so I'm a pregnant lady now with 2 kids in the house. That was crazy time, I think, for everybody, and a different crazy because we didn't have teenagers. I know like they have their own set of their own storyline for COVID, but ours was a little chaotic at the time, trying to keep 2 kids busy without losing our minds. And then, so then 3 came and I just everything restarted again. But I guess just knowing that it is fleeting, like I know that, they're going to be in school someday. You just kind of get through it. And my daughter is like your typical third who you just throw in the car and she goes to the field with you. So right. That's been her life for the last 3 years. And finally, I said to myself, it's just not fair to her to be that kid. Now she's got, her mind of her own, and we just went through potty training and all this. And I'm just so exciting. On a field 24/7. When she has to be, she'll be there, but she can't be driven to karate and basketball. She needs to start her own life with her own friends. So we have since hired help, for 2 hours twice a week, because it's just not doable. I mean, people do it, but I just felt like it's just also not fair, to drag it around. And, it's obviously you have to have some of the financial means to have help. And I've just tried to always balance it. My husband always said, look, you chose to stay home and like, that's your role and you got to make it work. And some days are going to be hard and some days are not, and just kind of roll it. So I try to keep that in the back of my mind. I know I'm very grateful to be in the position that I am. Doesn't mean you can't complain sometimes.
Of course.
But I do try to laugh at a lot of it. Like there are times like, I think I'll give a quick little anecdote from 2 days ago was the Jewish holidays and we were home and it was raining. And I think there was one point they were all saying mommy at the same time. And I just started to do like an orchestra thing with that. Like, you go, now you go. And just like, they were like looking at me like, what's wrong with mom? And I'm like, just keep going guys. Like, and I just had that moment, like daddy's upstairs, like he was fasting. I have not fast, but like he was miserable upstairs. And I was just like, I had to laugh in that moment because it was just, it's one of those moments you're like, oh my God, I just need peace and quiet. And you have 3 kids, but what are you going to do? And again, it's a small problem. It's not, I
No,
try.
of course.
I try perspective. It's this. There are women around this world dying to have what I have, and I just, when the moments are very tough, I need to do that. My husband reminds me to do that. Like we all are just in a constant reminder of that, to be grateful because there's people who want what you have. You
A
know.
100%, and I appreciate that, and being empathetic to those around the world and other mothers, and that changing the word that I used initially about struggle. But I also would like to kind of say that it's okay when we do complain, and it's okay
Right.
even in our current situation to recognize that things can be hard.
Right.
um, and also, I appreciate the support system that you built, and that you said, you had your neighbor across the street come over. And while maybe paying for a babysitter or something like that isn't feasible for everybody, but then exchange with someone, then say, okay, I'll take your kids for a couple hours. I used to do that with one of
I
my
agree
friends
with
when we
that.
lived in the city. You got a doctor's appointment and you can't find someone, drop your daughter off at my
Right.
apartment.
Hmm.
We'll have a little play date. It actually worked out for me because my son was occupied. And then we did the
Right.
exchange.
Yeah.
So I
Carpooling is,
guess,
we're in the suburbs, so carpooling is, and I always feel bad because again, if I don't have a permanent live-in situation here, I can't leave my kid and go run around and do everybody else. But in the events that other people can, take my kid, I'm like, look, the minute I can take your kid, I've got them. I'll get them at the party. I'll get, whatever it is, especially on the weekends when my husband's around. Like, I will take full advantage of when I can help somebody else because I know I will need it many times throughout the week, so for
a
sure.
100%, and not feeling badly about it, because understanding that we're all in a similar situation, and when we can, like they say, it takes a village, and when we can help someone out, that at some point when you're capable of doing it, then you can pay it forward. I mean, carpooling is huge.
We need it
Unfortunately,
out here.
personally, in some of the situations where we have it, it just doesn't always work out, and it's hard when you have kids going in multiple
Lots of directions. Yes.
directions. So I wanted to take a moment to, I know you've mentioned KidBiz, and
It's okay.
KidVids.
Nice. It's in
Um,
New York City, but no longer.
yeah. And so I wanted you to have an opportunity to kind of talk about that. And I think that it's interesting how it started out of a need of your own and
Yeah.
a kind of a passion of yours, and how you've turned this into a business that works for you, your schedule, and all of
Yes.
that.
So, like a lot of people in our generation, like my father was really big on taking videos and photos. We have a ton of photos. They're all in storage now in my house and boxes downstairs. But I mean, I'm shocked by some of the videos he has because he was carrying camcorders and he was
Right.
on ski mountains, and I have footage of me skiing, which I'm like, I'm nervous to take my phone out on a mountain. He was carrying like a big camcorder, but I'm really grateful to have that footage. And I have since, I'll talk about when it started, but I've since transferred things digitally, which is really nice to just have as a keepsake, to listen to
Yeah,
my
for sure.
grandparents who are deceased. It's just really nice to have. But when my son, it was 2014, he was born in January 2014, and I was, home, I guess, on maternity leave, and I just extended it through June. Thought I'd maybe return back to work that September. I did not return back to work. I think I went back once a week, just Wednesdays, just to get out of my house. And
Yeah,
it
but that's nice
was nice.
that
My
you've had
mom
that
lost
opportunity.
my son at that time, and I still was able to like stay in contact with colleagues. But I was really nervous. I don't remember what kind of iPhone I had at the time, but it certainly did not have an iCloud. So
Yeah.
if you lost your phone, or maybe it had just started, but I was not using iCloud. So if you dropped your phone or lost your digital memories, it was gone. And there was, and it's still around today. There on Facebook, there was this Upper East Side Mama group. It's very popular. It's still in existence today, and it probably started way before I was even a mom. But once in a while, I would see somebody say, this would be like once every 2 months, somebody who's similar to me would say, what does everybody do with their photos? I have 1,000 photos and it's only been 1 month of having my baby. Or, right? Like, what are you doing with them? And I didn't really have a solution. I was just printing my photos out like every other person. I was printing them. But the videos I was really curious about because I just wasn't enjoying watching them like in 10-second increments. Like I would take a video of my son, waiting to roll on his tummy, and like, you have like 20 videos of the same thing, and how do you watch this cohesively? So, and also really nervous about losing all the footage. Like that was a big thing, and everybody would just say, "Oh, I back it up on a hard drive." But I was like, "When would you ever watch it again? Like, when do you
Right.
watch this?" So I was kind of like in my head saying, like, how could I have what my dad created for me with these VHS tapes that I could just sit down and watch? And I am tech savvy and I really enjoy learning about technology. Maybe that's like the sciencey person in me. And my dad was very tech savvy, and we used to build rocket ships. Like we were that kind of
That's
relationship together.
cool.
So like we were, very mechanical. But so I kind of just self-taught. Obviously nothing complicated. Every, Mac had iMovie at the time. So I just kind of created something of his first 6 months, my son, and I think my new mom friends were just very lovely people and said, that looks really nice. And it was, looking back, it was horrific, if I have to say. Like, it wasn't that good. It was pretty bad. But it was something. And I still, I have it on a CD and I have it on a digital file. Wasn't great. The sound was, wonky. I was just learning, but they were very lovely. And then I think, again, somebody had posted something like, what do you do with your videos? This was like a month later. Somebody had posted that on the Upper St. Mom. And one of my mom friends, she knows who she, Kate. I'll send this podcast to her later. But Kate just tagged my name as a response, and someone was like, "Oh, do you do this?" And I was like, "What are you doing, Kate?"
Now you do.
I think Nikki can do something with your. And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, I didn't. I was not planning on going into a business of this of any sort. But I was like, what, I'm gonna be home. This would be kind of cool if I could like tweak it, make some money. Why not? And I had no clue about anything. Like, no clue how. There were so many problems I was about to encounter embarking on this. But I followed up, and it's funny, to this day, I don't think that first client really knows she was like my first client. And I was really scared. I was really terrified. I mean, I can go more into it, but like at the time I was in the city, and I'd have to, there was no sharing of folders and videos the way that we do today with
Right.
especially with my clients. I would have to go to people's apartments. I had no clue what I was going to encounter. I didn't know how much footage they were going to have. I didn't know if my equipment would even handle their footage. So it was just a very nerve-wracking experience. And I definitely, on that first job, encountered so many issues. I don't think they would have any clue that I encountered so many issues. But so many issues. Again, my technology was like not up to speed on this at all. So looking from like a laptop that had like no memory whatsoever. And like I said, I would go into people's apartments and like bring a flash drive, bring my computer. I had no clue what I was going to encounter. But I did like about, I want to say maybe like 7 years worth, like each year. It took a really long time. I had no clue what I was getting into. I didn't even know. She got the best deal because I did not charge well at all.
Right, because you
And
were learning.
yeah, she got the best deal. But I would have charged a lot more today. But I didn't know how long things were going to take. I didn't know anything. It was just kind of learning. And then from there, I'll cut this short. But from there, I think somebody else, I was able to get another client through this Upper East Side Mom group. Someone had reached out. She happened to be a blogger. And so after just one blog about what I had done for her, anytime somebody like typed into Google, like what to do with my cell phone videos, some people are like, I found this blog from 2015. And I'm like, so those two were like my first two. I definitely remember those two people. And then then I started to really like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I got to like upgrade my equipment. I got to like have a nice sticker label. I have to. And so it kind of grew that way. It was not intentional at all, but I definitely found that there was a niche for the video piece.
For sure.
And then eventually it grew to photos and art books, and I do an array of other things as well. So, but that's how it happened.
But that's so cool that it was something that you did that was important to you, that you had this friend that believed in you and tagged you. And
Positive friend. So if I'm gonna have to share this with her later, but it's not unlike her to be like, I know this girl and she's lovely and she can help you out. And I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? But it worked out. I'm still here today because of her.
yeah,
So
but it's nice to have someone believe in you,
yeah, that was yeah.
and that you also had the courage and the ability to say yes.
Yeah.
And just to see where it went. Because again, I think when people are trying to figure out what they want to do. They might have an inkling of an idea, but they're afraid. What are others going to think? Or can I really make this work? How can I make this work? Balancing motherhood. I know you mentioned that when your son would take naps, that's when you were first
I was doing it,
doing
yeah.
this. But
Hmm.
that if it's something that you're passionate about, that it's worthwhile to try to see ways to fit it into your schedule, because you need
Yeah,
to, fuel your kind of soul and purpose as well.
absolutely. I mean, like I said, there were struggles, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Like, I could just, like, it's not worth the struggle. And I feel like, I don't really consider myself like an entrepreneur, but
Yeah,
like,
you are.
a lot of people, you definitely know you ride the waves. There's ups and downs. And you're like, why did I do this? Like, why am I getting myself into this mess? But the product, it's nice to see the end result for sure. And I will say this, as far as like taking risks and just putting yourself out there, the minute I have an idea and I tell my husband I'm going to do it, he's like, oh crap, like she's going to do it. So he just knows that. Like with the book, I was like, I'm going to write a book. And he's like, no, like, what do you mean you're going to write a book? I'm like, no, I'm going to take all my stuff and I'm going to like do this. And like, he's very proud. I mean, I've known him since I was very young, like I said, undergrad. So like, he's ridden these waves with me, like, oh crap, she has an idea. I don't think he thought this was going to stick for the life of him. Like, I just think he thought like, oh, she'll be done in like a year and whatever. But the fact that I've like continued, again, it's not the most lucrative, business, but it does keep me busy, and there's a small profit turn, and it just, I think he's surprised that I have been sticking with this as long as I have, but he's not surprised that I started it. That part, I have no problem. If I have an idea, I run with it. So,
Well, I appreciate that too, that
yeah.
you're kind of all in. And I
Oh,
believe I remember you saying that, and it stuck with me, because that was the saying that my grandfather used to say, like, where there's a will, there's a way.
yes. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. I definitely believe that. It's hard at times, but
Yeah.
you can do things. Yeah, it's a quote for a reason. I definitely would live by that. Where there's a will, there's a way, for sure. I agree.
And speaking about kind of saying, yes, let's talk about a little bit about self care and what it looks like for you, and how you kind of got into this
Oh,
badass mom mode, because
yeah.
that's really something admirable, and how you spend time for yourself.
So, I always have been into, I guess like most people, mental health is obviously a very big piece of, what's going on today, and a lot of theories about why that is. But, mental health for me is attached to my physical health for sure. When I'm working out, I feel really good mentally, physically, all that. And now with kids, it's like super important to just stay in shape. So, after each baby, I've always tried a gazillion different things. I've always been in shape, but
Mhm.
say boxing. We had a whole conversation, but I was boxing before the pandemic had hit, in like these group classes. Like once in a while, I'd go to this boxing place in town. And then once COVID hit, I don't know if I should go into the whole story now. I don't know, but I think a lot of people were surprised to hear, considering my science background, my family had chosen not to be vaccinated. So, a lot of places at the time, gyms obviously were one of those Excelsior passes, which my family did not have. Local institutions where we were working out couldn't take us. The place that I was boxing at, because they were catering to the people in my neighborhood who were nervous and, believed in the vaccine, and wanted it for themselves and were a little in panic mode at the time. A lot of places didn't want people like myself or my family in their institutions. And so I was still allowed to box, but I couldn't do the group classes. They were still happy to have me, and I was really grateful for that. So it kind of, I always say you look for the silver lining. That was one thing I was able to kind of turn into something positive, because by not doing like a group class here or there, when I was in, I was doing these private classes now. Once things opened up, obviously, because at the time some things were really shut down for a little while.
Right.
But once things were opening up, I was able to do private lessons. And again, this kinds of you have to be in a position where you can afford private
Mhm.
boxing classes. But I was fortunate I was able to do that, and I just got hooked, and it probably got me into the best shape of my life, physically, mentally, punching a bag, nothing better. And just have
For
it's like
sure.
almost like a therapist for you talking to your trainers, and there's two, they're a brother sister duo, and yeah, it just really kind of got me through a really tough time. But I like a challenge, so once I got into the best shape of my life, I was like, so what's next? When am I ready to fight? And so they're like, are you sure? And So I was able to, I was fortunate. I was able to do my first fight, which was in December of this past year, 2022. Got in the ring, and my husband was watching the kids at home. He wasn't able to come with me. I went up with a team of people locally, and it was really cool. I mean, I lost, which is fine. It's a good life lesson for my kids to see, even though they didn't get
Yeah.
to watch. But I was just getting in a ring was like pretty badass and really cool, and just it was I don't know, it was just this like crazy experience that you have this whole year or two that was just kind of crappy for my family. I mean, for a lot of families for different reasons. And I just felt really strong coming out of that. That was like a really big moment for me. And then they recently had another one, which I went to and won. It was local. It was for a good cause, for Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. I thought I'd retire after the first one, but I came out of retirement to go do this. And I don't know, it stuck. I would do it again, honestly. It wasn't, I didn't get slaughtered in the second, one. But yeah, I would say so to stay, boxing has been kind of like a savior for me
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. I was there this morning, and we just talked about before like, the video podcast, and I had to clean up a little bit, but I would say that has been a big priority for me. If I get to boxing I try to go 4 days a week now. I can make it to the classes at 9 a.m. So I'm saving a little bit on the back end of not having to do privates anymore. But
Hmm.
I like to go boxing, and I do play tennis once a week, which was a childhood passion. That's something I did as a kid. So kind of bringing back that. During the summer, on Wednesday nights, my husband tries to help me out and come home early from work, if whenever he can, so I can play softball, women's softball in my town, which is also a childhood thing. I can't remember who told me this or where I had heard it, but like I had seen or read something that what you liked in your childhood is what will make you happy as an adult. So tennis and softball definitely are like happy places for me. I enjoy it then. I enjoy it today. The boxing is new for me though. But I would say those things and like going for a coffee with a friend or lunch with a friend. I just think I like human interaction, which is why I think COVID was like really hard for me and
Hmm.
for a lot of people. I like that, but I also get suckered into like, the Instagram and all that disconnect. My husband will say, you got to put it away. But I really do crave interaction. Like I like being around people. I'm a talker, so I like just being around friends and family. So it was those days were tough, very
Yeah,
tough.
for sure. And it allowed people, though, time to kind of slow down and think about what it is that they are passionate about and what they need to fuel themselves. And so it's admirable that you know what you need, that you need, kind of this outlet, that you need this social interaction, that you need this time for yourself in order to continue to then be able to give back to your three children, your husband, and everyone else around.
Definitely. And I
So,
will say this, my husband, he works in the city. He has a long commute into the city, and sometimes he just wants to come home and just rest, and I get it. He gets home probably around 7:30 to 8:30 range. But even for him, like I'll encourage him, my Monday nights go out, go to the gym. Like go do it for yourself. Even if I've been with the kids all day. Like
mhm.
just go, you need it. Like I get it. Like and same with Tuesdays. He likes his basketball and I said go do the nights that he wants to go do it. It's not even a question to me. Go do it. Even if I've been with them all day, schlepping around to different activities, it's not even a question for me. Go do it. Because we all need it. I do it during the day. You get to go do it at night. So,
Yeah,
um,
for sure. It's like kind of building those boundaries or those non-negotiables that you need in order to continue to move forward.
yes.
And so, as we kind of wrap up the conversation, I'm curious if you've shared a lot, if there's any life lesson or something else that you've heard or a mantra or something that kind of keeps you moving forward that you think is important to share with the women of the Next Chapter
You know,
community.
I don't know if I specifically, we talked about where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, just, I don't know if I have specific quotes. We've talked about, like I said, what is it? The days are slow. All these things, you just got to take the wisdom that our people are sharing constantly. They
Yeah.
probably know something. And then you kind of integrate what works into your life. But I don't know. I'm still learning. So if you have any more wisdom to share, I'll take it. But I don't know if I have a specific mantra. I just keep trucking forward, and if you have the means to pursue something, take the risk, go do it. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can really advise.
No, that I appreciate that, and the fact that you said continue to learn, I think that
Yeah.
is huge. Being open-minded, continuing to learn, continuing to grow, and understanding, as you said, that the path that you take has twists and turns, and to just kind of lean in to that. So I appreciate all the wisdom that you have shared and becoming a member of the Next Chapter
Yep,
community. And I know that
definitely.
many other moms will be able to relate to the information that you shared. So I appreciate you
Thanks for
joining.
having me.
Thank you.